Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Cynthia Asen, Business Development for Western Canada for Parvis Investments. We specialize in connecting investors with high-quality real estate opportunities and working alongside top-tier developers to bring well-structured, high-return projects to market. Parvis will be leading the capital raise for Laidler Capital Fund, which will be available to investors in early April. This fund will focus on 3 multiplex developments in Burnaby, targeting for forecasted returns that exceed 20% annualized. It's an exciting opportunity for investors to participate in building affordable housing that appeals to young families, empty nesters looking to live in family-friendly neighborhoods. I'm very excited to be here with this insightful session. 3 biggest mistakes developers make when submitting applications to City Hall. Joining me are 2 incredible industry experts. Bill Laidler, founder and CEO of Laidler Capital Group. Bill has a strong background in real estate development and land assembly, helping developers structure deals and raise capital for the real estate projects. His expertise in strategically assembling parcels of land and navigating municipal processes makes him an invaluable resource for developers looking to maximize project potential. Gary Pooni, president of Pooni Group, Inc., brings nearly 25 years of experience in urban planning and real estate development. Gary has been instrumental in guiding 65 major real estate developments across 23 municipalities throughout Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Island, Sea to Sky, Alberta, Ontario. His strategic guidance and expertise in policy planning and public consultation have been pivotal in shaping some of Canada's most impactful and land development projects. Notably, Gary has been recognized as a power player in Metro Vancouver, ranking 10th in Vancouver Magazine's Power 50 list in 2025. So if you're a developer, investor, an industry professional, this session will provide valuable insights into avoiding common pitfalls that can delay or even derail a project and ultimately impact returns. We'll cover real-world examples, best practices, and take your questions along the way. So please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. If you're interested in learning more or investing, I encourage you to register for the upcoming Multiplex Townhome Burnaby Builder Showcase on March 27th, or connect with us. I'm happy to go over the details. So let's dive in.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for the introduction and welcome, everyone. It's been a pleasure to work with both Cynthia and Gary Pooni, pulling this webinar together and moving forward into educating communities on the opportunity within small-scale multi-unit housing. We'll start with a presentation on what is small-scale multi-unit housing, and Gary will walk through the 3 mistakes developers make when submitting applications to City Hall. We're fortunate to work with Gary early in our career on some of our first development applications, and the expertise and guidance that the Pooni Group and Gary specifically helped Laidler in the growth of our development company was invaluable. And it's a pleasure and honor to be able to share his knowledge with the rest of the real estate community to not only learn from past mistakes, but also the successes that Pooni Group has been able to deliver for clients on a larger scale, and now bring it in to homeowners, developers, and builders who are working on the smaller 4 to 6 unit developments that are pre-zoned, and in some cities are getting to building permit approval within 12 months. As an example of the traction in Vancouver since the multiplex zoning was adopted, late 2023, there have been 318 properties that have applied for 4 to 6 unit developments, bringing approximately 1,500 homes to market over the next 18 months. As an example, one of the first multiplexes to reach project marketing pre-sales is Adira West. This is a 6 unit development with 2 front-back duplexes and 2 laneway homes in the back lane. All the parking in Vancouver is off the back lane, which differs significantly from the Burnaby developments like this project, which is the rendering for Dufferin, a 12 unit townhouse slab on grade development on a double lot with a shared internal driveway. The biggest difference between Vancouver and Burnaby is Vancouver requiring the parking off the back lane and no internal driveways creates parking pads and detached parking stalls, where Burnaby opens up the opportunity to have attached garages and parking for each unit accessible to the front doors and having backyards. As an alternative design style within small-scale multi-unit housing in Burnaby, this is an application in the Caribou area on a 9,500 square foot lot, 4 detached homes, the back 2 designed for downsizers, 2,200 square feet each, and the front two designed for families over 3 stories with a ground level rec room or nanny suite. To see the importance of the size of the lot, the 72 feet of frontage allows for a middle drive aisle to come in, separating the property and providing for 4 attached garages and 4 separated buildings. We've seen the opportunity within Burnaby and Vancouver with pre-zoning have concerns of oversupply, and it's really specific to each property on what the feasibility will be. Smaller 33 and 50-foot lots make it very difficult to have the space required to provide parking access and on-site parking. The saleability of these multiplexes with or without parking will differ significantly, and the larger the sites that you're developing, the more likely you're going to have the absorption at the end of the project. As an example, in Burnaby, for a 6-unit development project on a standard 8,400 square foot lot with a land acquisition price of $2.3 million, based on the Burnaby's new R1 zoning, each of these 6 units can be 1,850 square feet. That's after taking away the 250 square foot single car garage. Using a revenue number of $865 a square foot, selling these slab on grade townhomes for $1.6 million provides $9.3 million in net revenue after a $310 per square foot hard cost budget, just under $4 million, and a budget for soft costs and financing. The total cost of a small scale multi-unit housing project in Burnaby is estimated to be just under $7.8 million, providing just under $1.6 million return based on these assumptions. Critically here is the land price being secured at $2.3 million, and we've already seen the market push to 2.4, 2.5, and $2.6 million for these types of properties in the premium locations. But why small scale multi-unit housing is making such a big impact on the development industry is the reduced investment timelines from up to 6, 7 to 8 years. Like my last project in Port Moody, a 6-story, 88-unit condo building, down to less than 3 years, has a significant impact on the annual returns. If we take this same example with a $7.7 million cost and a 75% construction loan, it's just under $2 million of equity to finance this project with a $1.6 million expected profit and 80% return on equity. If you average that across 6 years, it's only 13% annual return. But by cutting that development investment timeline in half, down to 3 years, boosts the annual returns to over 20%, and why Laidler has moved into this space and launching Laidler Capital to work with investors and sharing these returns with community members and other developers who want to move into a shorter investment timeline with the reduced risks that come along with it. Not all properties are profitable, and some of the biggest red flags to look for when making your acquisitions is determining where the parking will be located, most specifically where the city will allow the driveway letdowns, where the PMT will be located, and whether you have enough lot width to allow for two-way traffic driveway. Secondly, the environmental concerns. Any waterways or peat bogs still are respecting the riparian areas and the setbacks, along with a major red flag being the boulevard trees and neighboring trees. Cities are protecting the boulevard trees and are requiring you to get written consent from the neighbors if you're taking down a tree on their property or on a shared property line. Otherwise, you have to respect the canopies and root protection zones. We've dropped a number of projects alone based on these tree requirements in Burnaby, and is a major red flag to look for on your acquisitions. Finally, slopes, the additional cost and approvals of structural retaining walls, and also the restrictions on your driveway slopes make slope properties very difficult to develop in this environment. And with so many opportunities across the city, strongly recommend you look for flat land to move forward. For anyone who would like to learn more about small scale multi-unit housing, we're hosting the Multiplex Townhome Burnaby Builder Showcase on March 27th. This will include a presentation by Gary Pooni, myself, and 4 builders with their current site plans, floor plans, and projected financials in the Burnaby marketplace. At this webinar, we're offering all attendees 2-for-1 tickets. Use the discount code Pooni to secure your spot, and we'll see you there It's now my pleasure to introduce Gary Pooni, one of the leading developers in the development industry in Vancouver. Thank you for being here, Gary. We look forward to working with you and all the exciting things that our companies are collaborating on in the future. Appreciate your time sharing your knowledge with all the attendees today.
Thank you for that incredible intro. Super humbling and flattering. I want to start off very quickly about our relationship with Laidler. And so Bill's been a friend of mine, and we've done some work together and asked me to come in and speak at one of his academy courses. And as a thank you, Bill made a substantial contribution to our foundation. And that foundation goes to support a meal program within daycares and blue-collar neighborhoods around the city and around the region, and is also our scholarship program. So Bill looks and sounds very corporate, but I can tell you he's a super softie. And this working relationship with us has began with his commitment to community. So thanks for this. You're going to be seeing more of Laidler and Pooni working together into the future. So it's a little bit of a teaser about our working relationship. So 3 mistakes, and they're either mistakes or misconceptions or just a thinking in your mind or an expectation or assumption as to how things will go. Whether your project is big or small, whether it is a multiplex or a high rise, I would say that the mistakes in thinking are the same. First one is that your approvals are going to be easy. The second one is that everyone is doing it. Why would I? And lastly, just because you have built it, the project will make a profit. So those are the 3 things that I want to highlight. And at the very end, we'll give you some tips on how to navigate through these 3 challenges. So when SSMUH first came forward in our industry, which is super tight and likes to talk amongst each other, it seemed like it was going to be quite simple, right? We've got rules around secondary suites, duplexes. The provincial rules came in around minimum lot size for 3 units, for 4 units, and then in a transit area to be 6 units. And so there was a lot of talk and discussion around this, and it seemed like it was going to be quite simplistic. So visually, you would think that the process would look like this. And Bill just highlighted that it is much more complicated when it comes to building. So in your head, the previous slide may visually look like this, that you can build 2, 3, 4, or 6 dwelling units quite easily, and that there's going to be an ease in terms of the process, in terms of building, and this is going to be happening everywhere. So here is a snapshot of how just a little summary of each municipality. And if you look at the fine print, you can see that each city in the region has a different set of rules as to how and when they were implementing SSMUH. So on the approval side, just because you're doing one thing in Vancouver, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing in Burnaby and then the same thing in Westminster. So if you're getting into this space, you'll have to educate yourself on the rules in each city. Very similar to a high-rise rezoning or a multifamily rezoning. Even when it comes to single-family home construction, every city has slightly different rules. Okay, so the approvals part is not going to be uniform. It's not going to be the same. You're going to have to get educated on know your rules in each municipality. In Vancouver, you take a look at the transit areas and where there's going to be higher density. This one is where I think it's going to be a bit more complicated because you'll be underwriting at a certain height, 20 stories, 12 stories, 6 stories, 4, and there's a number of different rules. Given the number of rapid transit stations there are in Vancouver, if you're going to be looking at a site here, check to see what your transit-oriented area guidelines, rules around development are. You might be looking at building a multiplex next to a SkyTrain station as an extreme example, but the ability to build more there is in front of you. Okay, so just a bit of a tip. So the main thing here in terms of approvals is that Bill and I talk a lot about how time is money. And if we're in a time of flux over the next year when it comes to the rules and how SSMUH is the acronym for the small scale multi-unit housing. So that multi-unit housing in terms of how it's going to be implemented in every city is going to be different, as I highlighted. So you're going to have to give yourself a little bit of extra time, and time means money. So if you put a site under contract, make sure that you've given yourself enough time, because the approvals process is not that simple yet. It's kind of a price and cost of admission if you're getting into development, and time is one of them. Okay, so as a tip, just make sure that you have given yourself the leeway on a financing side and a bit of a cushion in terms of time. It's all because the approvals are probably going to take longer. So this is from 2022, and it's the average time that it takes for a major rezoning. It's not around SMUH or multiplex. I'm just giving an indication. Now, it may look like that we're harping on Vancouver and North Vancouver when it comes to major developments, but this just highlights, it's not pointing a finger at any city. It's just showing that there is a difference in terms of the capacity and the rules and the time that it takes in each city. You can see Langley City seems, and Pitt Meadows were the quickest. I would say that in terms of the amount of activity there in 2022 was quite low. So their approvals were probably quite quick. West Vancouver is a whole other discussion, I will say, as to why things take longer there. I think there's just far less acceptance when it comes to development proposals. And Vancouver has rules upon rules and policy upon policy that takes quite some time to get through. So it just shows you that there is the sliding scale, that there's a varying time in each municipality in terms of the process that it takes. It's not uniform. It's not standardized. So the second point is, well, if everyone's doing this, why would I? And is there an opportunity here? So we'll get on to the second point before we close off. So there's some great quotes around the ease of doing something, right? If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's a phrase that I've used with the work that we do in terms of development planning, with the work that Bill does in terms of building. Everyone isn't doing this. It's a very sort of select group that is educated. The real estate industry, the construction industry, is the #1 industry in the province. Construction, building, infrastructure, homes, etc. Tech is starting to increase and close that gap, and primary resource development is starting to fade. So there is a skill set that is needed to get through this. Remember when laneway houses were introduced? And there was a bit of a hysteria that there was going to be like these crazy weeds or mushrooms. Laneway houses were going to just pop up everywhere. And so that legislation's been around for 10 years, maybe longer. And you're seeing that there's more and more that happens each year, but it was intended to create a housing movement over time. I'm sure everybody looked at building a laneway house and seeing what the cost would be and how difficult it would be, and getting your site servicing. And with multiplex, you're looking to see if there is enough power and hydro to the door, to the front yard in terms of servicing your site. A whole layer of complexity, but it didn't mean that laneway houses were built everywhere. There was a long-term strategy that would create housing. Now, when a house comes up for sale, say in the west side of Vancouver, and it is being knocked down for $3 million, and you're putting in a duplex, and you look at a laneway house, or you build a big single-family house and put in a laneway, that's the type of housing movement that created. Is meant to be densification over a period of time, right? So it didn't happen at once. Not everyone was doing it, and there are a handful of people that have been extremely successful at building this. So the thinking around the multiplex development is going to be the same. So another quote: if everyone was building multiplex everywhere, there's probably, not an opportunity. If everyone is doing it, then there's really nothing that's there. The example that I use is the phasing out of gas jockeys. Some of us are old enough to know when you pulled in the gas station, there was a gas jockey that would come in and fill your car. And once everybody was able to just do that themselves, there isn't really an opportunity for a gas jockey anymore, is there? So if everybody was building multiplex, if everyone is building laneways, there's probably not a business opportunity there. There is a complication to building this, and there is an opportunity. Not everyone is going to do it. In summary, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, the reason is that, and Bill highlighted earlier, that it's still a risky business. Getting into home building is risky. It's financially risky. That's the main risk. And so there's 4 or 5 major things that you need to navigate to get through that risk piece. That's why everyone is not building this. The ones that are educated, the ones who have done this before, you might not make a lot of money on your first one, but you will on subsequent projects, and you will be a competitor in this space. And lastly, I'm going to get into this a little bit later. I just didn't want to go on to the next slide without mentioning, make sure that if you want to be competitive, that you always submit a full application to the city. You'll go to the bottom of the pile if it's incomplete and you're starting over again. I'm going to talk about that again a little bit later. So the third point was that this assumption that every project is going to make a profit. Now, very quickly, there's 4 or 5 things that Bill and I would like you to be aware of. You need to be educated on what you're doing. You aren't going to make money in this space. You aren't going to make a business model of building homes if you're not educated. For example, different rules in different cities. If you are already building, if you're already in the industry, you have an advantage over someone who is not, okay? Bill mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to underscore this underwriting again, that you have to financially underwrite your project cautiously, especially in this capital market environment. I give Bill credit for opening up Laidler Capital to fund these smaller scale projects. I would say that over the next 5 years, you're going to see lenders, private lenders, looking at smaller scale projects. They are financeable, they are buildable, and they are sellable. I am concerned about large scale master plans. If you don't have the land already, if you're looking at acquiring something, you will have to be incredibly well financed. So if that on the one extreme is starting to fall off, and the 1,500 units that Bill said are coming to market on the small scale side, that is going to fill that gap. So that's my prediction on that one. Lastly, and it's a bit of an unknown, I don't know how pre-sales are going to work when it comes to this product. I think people are going to have to walk in to see a project, to see a floor plan. So you're going to have to build a couple of them where people can come in and look at them. It's not like you're opening up show homes on large swaths of land and people can come in and take a look and pick which floor plan they want. It's going to be a bit more difficult. So the first few, I think you're going to have to build, and I think you're going to have to carry the cost on the construction and then sell once completed. Once you have a few of them going and people can see your floor plans, they can see the building, they can see the unit, then you might get into pre-sales, but probably not in the early stages. So when you get into the details of building, there's just a number of things that I think you need to keep in mind, and Bill would know this far better than I do. He outlines some of the site conditions, but it doesn't end there in terms of profitability of your project. Like just take a look at foundation, roofing, drainage, multi-unit structural issues with wood frame, electrical, plumbing, flooring, windows, etc. All these finishes, you're going to run into a number of issues when it comes to small scale development. It's the same as a big developer. So this is where I think working through the kinks in your first few projects, if you're taking this on, or working with somebody that already has the expertise. Okay, this is again why not everyone is going to be doing this. So don't just look at your land and look at the building. You're going to have to account for some of these smaller scale deficiencies, but big cost items, and carry a bigger contingency in your pro forma for your first few projects.
This is such a great point, Gary. And one of the items that was easily overlooked when we were going through our initial acquisitions was the percentage of windows that were allowed on the sides of properties. Being within 4 feet of a side property line, there are strict restrictions on how big those windows can be, both at the city level and in the BC building code. And it does restrict the flexibility of design on site significantly.
Yeah, so that's why working with somebody who understands code, so you're not running into these problems later. My dad he passed away in 2015, and poor guy, there's so much stress they went through building our family home. And he tried to act as a contractor. In fact, he had a heart attack on site, just shoveling dirt that someone had put into a street tree. And he had to come in from work and just move everything around, and had a small cardiac issue. And so it's extremely difficult. And I saw the stress that he went through. So ensuring that you've got a qualified team that works with you, don't cut costs in trying to just do it yourself until you are experienced. You'll make a little bit less money, but I swear you'll probably live longer by having a qualified team. So, okay, it sounded very, very depressing. This is a picture of Bill last night as I was going through my slides and sent it to him. He says, is there going to be any optimism? Or are people going to be crying themselves to sleep and getting under their desks? I'm hearing this webinar and getting into the fetal position. But there is optimism. I'm not saying that this is all bad news. There's an incredible business opportunity. So I'm going to give you some tips, and it's a bit of a teaser because Bill in his showcase is going to get into these things in detail. So a couple of questions that I'm sure that you have is like ensuring how your application is prioritized, because I spoke at the very beginning about how time is money. You need to submit a complete application. Okay, so I said that already. Whether you have a major high-rise rezoning application or a single-family home, if you submit something that is not complete, that is not well thought out, that you haven't done your work, you're going to go to the bottom of the pile. Submitting development applications at the city, and I'm sure you all know this, there is no timeline for when they will get back to you. I don't want to say it's subjective, but it goes to them, most municipalities, and they'll report back to you when they report back to you. So make it easy on yourself, do the work, and submit a complete body, an application body. So that's number one. And then reiterating what I had said earlier, every city has different rules. So educate yourself on that. Number two is we are in a short period of time where there's going to be growing pains. There is this struggle between the province and cities, whether it's multiplex or TOAs. Every city has to update their bylaws and their official community plans to be in provincial compliance by the end of the year. It is putting great strain on city halls right now to do that. And so the cities have been quite accustomed to running the housing process. The province has been now pointing fingers at cities, some cities with a bigger wagging finger than others. And it's essentially saying that you have not done your part in terms of speeding up housing approval, so the province is going to do it. So over the course of this year, if you're submitting something, just know that you might get caught in some of this crossfire, big project or a small project. It, I'm hoping, does iron itself out 14, 18 months and things start to smooth over. Number three, pre-zoning is going to change our cities. I am a rezoning planner. I am a city planner, urban planner by academic training and professional affiliation. This is going to be an industry changer. So the SMUH, the small scale multi-unit housing, is going to be a pre-zone where you'll just be going in for building permits. There is going to be minimum rules around development projects at rapid transit. The city of Vancouver has announced their first of 4 major areas that are pre-zoned. And this is one in around the Broadway corridor. So with that pre-zoning, you know what your baseline development potential is, and you can go for a development permit and building permit. So that is going to come. And you have the city of Vancouver. More so, I would say there's a strong political direction to change the status quo when it comes to housing with Vancouver and with Burnaby. Those two are moving faster than others, and Burnaby has moved the fastest. I'm going to give the province a lot of credit on making this a game changer and knowing it's going to be a difficult year ahead for cities, for infrastructure capacity and doing all that planning. But the status quo was not working and something needed to happen. Okay, so now moving from a government side to a more micro level. When Bill sent me the Adira West project in South Vancouver, the first thing I looked at were the floor plans. I've lived in a duplex, I've lived in a condo, and I know that sellable, workable plans is the key to the product. Don't design a skin and an incredibly beautiful project on the outside without something that doesn't work on the inside. And I'll give you a few small examples. One of the first condos that I lived in had a closet in the entryway that was big enough to put in a hanger, but it wasn't big enough to put in a coat. That's how tight that they had made it, that there wasn't enough space. So everything was either falling off or barely fit. Small things like that. There was an entryway front door in a duplex that I lived in where the entrance came right into the living room. There was no landing, there's no entryway, nothing even small. So it was quite awkward when you open the door and you come right into a living room. So there's just little things like that. The number of bedrooms that you would have in a multiplex, if you can get a 3rd bedroom in, it's going to work great. 2, probably not. So this is understanding what a buyer actually wants and what is sellable. I think duplex and townhouse was becoming the new single family home, or at least sort of that wood frame entry for a young couple. or even a small family. And I would say multiplex is where that's headed next for that and for seniors. So when it comes to the work that you do and in this level of scale, it's going to be very Darwinian, right? The best ones are going to rise up to the top. And there is a cost of entry to get into this space. And the process itself is going to prevent all this oversupply, right? So it is going to be the educated ones, the qualified ones that will get through this. Again, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And then, yeah, so just to sort of sum things up and to close off, the multiplex policy isn't going to transform neighborhoods over the course of a couple of years. It is a housing solution that will be implemented over the long term. You're not going to see hundreds of thousands of these in 2 years, but it will happen in terms of the attrition of a single family home over time. Okay. Number two, the changing demographics. And this can be a whole other webinar around young professionals, extended families, and particularly with seniors. There is a massive bulge of seniors that will be looking for homes, and it's going to have to be flexible. An example that I will give you is that my mom is quite ill right now with dementia, Lewy body disease, and is in a care home. But leading up to that, my brother and family moved in with her and took care of her for a couple of years. So there is an extended family situation that I think is going to need to be looked at. And also as young professionals, even young kids are looking for a different place to live, and it might be still close to family. So watch how some of this sociological changes might be affecting our housing changes. And then lastly, it's the qualified, educated, well-financed builders that are going to be the successful ones. Okay, so there's space here in terms of a business model. And I think that wraps it up, Bill.
That's great insight, and thank you for sharing. And I completely agree. The best floor plan will win. With excess supply in the marketplace and buyers having choice, it will be the best product that succeeds. And no longer can you build on a busy road or sell a townhouse on a busy road, because that was the only place townhouses would be. Now it's going to be in the premium locations on the best properties, closest to the best schools and the best parks, with the best floor plans that will succeed.
Yeah, it's housing basics. You know, the multiplex and townhouse on arterials was the only choice. So you had to be there. But you can get back into all those housing basics that you just mentioned.
Coming on to 11 o'clock, I want to thank everyone for being here. If you'd like to learn more about the opportunity investing or developing your own projects, join us at the Builder Showcase. We're going to have lots of new information from Gary on opportunities to learn from him and his experience with new training programs that we're working on collaboratively, and excited to be delivering to the marketplace with Laidler Academy. There's opportunities to be an investor if you want to passively participate in bringing new housing to market. Thank you for being here. Use the discount code Pooni for 2-for-1 tickets. That expires on Friday, March 14th. We'll see you at the showcase. Well, thank you for being here. We had over 200 people in attendance, over 300 people registered. We'll get the replay out to everyone. See you at the showcase. Look for more content coming out from Gary and myself. Thank you, Gary, for your time, all of your expertise and knowledge. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to next time.